Tonight, our featured guest is Micah Thomas, a New York City-based jazz pianist whose newest album, Reveal, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Welcome, Micah.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Micah, so listening to the album Reveal is a pretty intense experience. I've lived it as a pretty intense experience. And what kept coming to my mind is, seems even, that you're somehow invoking someone like Franz Liszt, a young romantic, in that kind of intensity. Tell us about how your musical tastes were formed and how you became a jazz pianist.
Sure. I started playing piano when I was pretty young, and I listened to a lot of classical music and I listened to a lot of jazz music. I listened to a lot of Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Thelonious Monk growing up. Um, and I was playing with, people in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio when I was growing up in middle school and high school. And then I moved to New York in 2015, and I was just trying to absorb all I can. I really looked up to people like Sullivan Fortner and Jason Moran, and they've both been, and Fred Hersch, and they've all been very helpful with as I moved here. So it's basically just, I've tried to pick up stuff from whoever I'm around, and I've been very lucky to be around some amazing musicians.
Okay, so Miles Davis, and then a lot of these peer pianists of today, and classical music. Tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that. What influences?
Sure. I mean, I started studying classical music when I was, I think, 3. And then I started, working on learning how to play jazz and improvise when I was, I don't know, 8. So it started with classical, and I kept studying with piano teachers until I went um, to New York City. And I still, so I learned some Beethoven, some Brahms. I kind of went through a large gamut. Right now, I probably listen to more classical music than I ever have. I listen to a lot of Bach and a lot of Webern, and I went through a pretty big Schumann phase, and I still really like Schumann. Yeah,
Okay, and just tell us quickly, if you can, if it's possible, what are the main differences between being a jazz pianist and being a classical pianist?
um, well, you know, for many reasons, jazz is even becoming a label that doesn't seem that applicable to me in some ways. So it's yeah, for many reasons. But I guess, you know, classical pianists work so hard on perfecting the, I mean, well, no, art jazz pianists do too. But I guess classical pianists, most classical pianists I know don't really know how to improvise that well. That's a main thing. Another thing that's different is the sense of rhythm. I think the pulse in the American traditions tends to be more strict, and then you work around the strictness, but the classical pulse is very tends to be very free. Though, I mean, those are some of them. And of course, there's exceptions. There's jazz pianists that could do the classical stuff very well and vice versa. So,
Okay, thanks so much. So let's listen to
yeah.
this is the next tune we're going to listen to, and it's called Look at the Birds. So, Micah, you in your liner notes you wrote, quote, "This album is really important to me. Dean Torrey, Kayvon Gordon, and I recorded this at Power Station in one day, a 7 hour session that left us exhausted but happy. It was one of the best. It was the best I ever felt after a recording session." End quote. Tell us about this concept of yours of the jazz trio. I think I read in the liner notes you're influenced also by someone like Bill Evans, Scott LaFaro. Tell us about what the jazz trio is, your jazz trio, your concept, and what this album's all about.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I wouldn't have even, part of the reason I even am serious about pursuing band leading stuff is because this is a specific opportunity that I don't get to have in the same way with other ensembles, just because it's three people, and this specific format in terms of instrumentation has been worked on for, at least more than half a century really seriously. And I'm able to draw on a tradition that keeps, everyone keeps breaking the rules. Andrew Hill and Richard Davis kept breaking the rules of what the bass role and the piano role is supposed to be. Scott LaFaro and Bill Evans and Gary Peacock and Paul Bley did the same thing. So it's a specific format where, you know, since there are only three people and we're coming from understandable roles, everyone can break the roles in ways that they want. And um, so yeah, it's basically, you know, a group that's small enough and has a recognizable enough instrumentation that's easy for us to have a conversation where each voice matters and everyone has the power to bring balance or imbalance to the situation. And there's a nice balance of um, referring to, I mean, tradition it's not even that tradition is the point. It's more like it's helpful to have precedence in terms of what's possible and what works so that we can, you know, draw from them or break them. So it's a nice balance of tradition, and there's still a lot of stuff to explore.
And tell us, Michael, about the two people in particular. So as you said, you're three people. You know, it's a very intimate group, a double bassist and a drummer. Tell us, you write in the
Mhm.
liner notes that you thank them also for teaching you so much. I mean, you
Yeah.
thank all these people. It's very modest. Tell us about what it's like playing with them. What, personally you've learned from them, or you like so much about performing with them.
Yeah, I was actually, while you were playing that, I was just like reminded of how great both of them are. So no, Dean is one of the first people that I played with when I moved to New York City. We started playing just little gigs as we were both sidemen, just playing gigs with other people at Smalls Jazz Club. We our first gig together was probably 2016, and it was one of my first gigs in New York City at all. And then over time, I was just like, I think I just want to play more music with this guy. And he's one of the only bassists I've ever hired. It's only recently have I really had any projects that don't involve him in it. Just and then Kayvon, I started playing with Kayvon, what, in 2018, 2019, something like that. And whenever the three of us hang out, it's really funny. There's a lot it's peak comedy. But yeah, I would just say that the personalities seem to balance each other out. We have combinations of groundedness and craziness that kind of just, in different ways we are able to serve each other really well. And you know, the more we play, the more they understand me and what I'm going for without me saying anything, and the more the vision becomes shared. So that's something I've noticed.
Wow, sounds like a lovely friendship, musical and more
Yeah.
extra musical. So let's listen to now. This is Eros. So, Micah, in your liner notes, you write, quote, I don't always see an extra musical meaning in my music, but when I do, I sometimes see it before or while I'm writing, and sometimes I see it after. So often I end up saying that there is an extra musical idea that surrounds the music rather than that the music was written for something, end quote. Then you open the floodgates and you tell the reader about these intensely personal experiences about that you associate with each tune on the album. Tell us about this album, as you said before, that's so important to you. Reveal.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think when I was writing that, I was just thinking about how much people seem to relate to music more when I relate it to something non-musical. And it to the point where there was this one performance where I just randomly announced one of the songs on the set, and that was the song that everyone gravitated toward, even though it wasn't even that accessible of a song. So that was I don't know, that was a learning experience for me. And then, you know, I think with all my music, it just necessarily reflects whatever I'm experiencing at the moment, whether it's um, whether it's something I'm reading or some relationship I'm in the middle of or whatever. Um, so I think some of this music was written during 2020 and 2021 when, the pandemic stuff was happening. And I was also, you know, reading some stuff that was really opening my eyes to some things. And um, then, yeah, some of it was written beforehand and there were other intense things that I was going through. And it all just reflects in the music. So sometimes when I listen to albums, like when I listened to my first album, Tide, I remember the stuff and where I was when I like inwardly when I wrote that music and when I performed it. So it just ends up becoming a reflection of where I am at that moment. That's really if I'm writing anything more about the experiences, it's almost me just encapsulating the larger truth, which is just this is who I was at that moment in a very full way.
And so, how'd you decide then on these particular to put these tunes together in one album? So you guys recorded it just in one day, 7 hours or whatever. But obviously, you
Yeah,
had a big experience with these already playing these tunes together. How did you know that they were the ones that
right.
had to be included?
There's a whole, you know, what are there like 8, 9 songs on that album? There's a whole at least 9 other songs that we had also been playing that I felt I always gravitated toward the songs that were on the album, and I felt like they were the strongest. That's really all it is, that and some of them like Lightning and Eros and Sacred Memory. Those 3 songs we had been playing since 2018. So I always knew I wanted to record them, but yeah, eventually you just, what my experience has been is you play, and over time, if you're able to play with a band regularly, you eventually get a sense of what everyone sounds strong on and what which pieces deliver the most. And you're like, well, we should probably record this. So it's almost inevitable.
Okay, let's listen to Sacred Memory. So, I opened the show by saying that Reveal seems to invoke the romanticism of Franz Liszt. And I said that because of the way the music sounds is intensified by the it's by intensified by spiritual dimension that you write about unapologetically in the liner notes. For example, you write, quote, "Look at the birds," references Matthew 6, verses 26 to 34, another important Bible passage in my life that has both supported and challenged me in my journey with anxiety, end quote. There are several more Bible passages you cite as inspirational, and you intimate that spirituality entails growing into the very best person you can be. What is spirituality's place in music? Is your music practice a spiritual endeavor? And does that mean that you, as you improve Micah, the musician, you improve Micah, the person?
Mhm. Um, yeah, I think music is a spiritual endeavor. I think there's a way to see almost anything as a spiritual endeavor. Uh, but certainly I think what's beautiful about music is I've seen people who, you know, including myself, have all sorts of personal problems, but when they get into the music, I can see not necessarily their best self, but just a self without some of the issues. Sometimes someone who is unable to express anything that beautiful in real life is able to express something really beautiful through music. So I think it's just a beautiful, I mean, all art can be like that, but art is a beautiful medium through which everything we're going through can be filtered and expressed in a really good way. Yeah, I think everything is spiritual. I think, um, you know, my it's hard to encapsulate what anyone's understanding of God is, but my understanding is that God is everywhere and that God is love and that he wants us to love him and love other people. And that just kind of thing, that just becomes into that just goes into everything. It goes into how I play music, it goes into how I talk to people. It goes into which experiences and which feelings I value and which ones I don't value as much and how I interpret it. And that just yeah, so and I kind of grew up with this faith, so it's hard for me to separate what would be a spiritual way of living from a non-spiritual way of living. Um, and I also think that more things are and more experiences that all people have are spiritual than people give them credit for. So,
Okay. So let's listen quick to Troubled Mind. And here we go. Micah, so what do you wish those who listen to this album?
I hope that my music sounds or can make people feel like they're in a three-dimensional or four-dimensional space. I hope that they feel like I hope that they can imagine a world where they can move around and in several different ways and where the music and where people can move around. And I guess I want to express freedom of possibility for movement And I hope that they feel like the music is emotionally honest and can connect to where they are in an emotionally honest way. Um, yeah, those are two of the big things I would hope for. But I'm also just interested to see what the heck people's reactions to the album are, regardless of what I want them to be.
Okay. So let's see how we can get it. Here it's on Amazon. It's Reveal by Micah Thomas once again. So you can stream it or you can buy the MP3s or the audio CDs for $17.98. I'll put that in the chat box here. So it's again, Micah Thomas Reveal is the name of the album. And let's see how we can stay in touch with Micah because I understand that Micah's got some. Here's his website. It's micah.io. There it is, New York Times Best Jazz Albums of 2023. There it is. And you can also listen to it, buy it. So easier than going to Amazon. Just come here, micah.io. And imagine you've got lots of interesting concerts coming up too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about some of these. That's right. Yep.
Fantastic. So, Micah, people can reach out to you if they have any questions. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
So
Absolutely.
feel free to reach out to Micah, talk to him, tell him your thoughts. He'll listen to answer your questions. Again, that's micah.io. Thank you so very much to Micah Thomas.
Man, thank you for having me.
So let's take a look at what's coming up next week on Vienna Live. So we have quite a few shows lined up here. And next week is Marlon Simon and the Nagwal Spirits on Different Paths. Marlon Simon and the Nagwal Spirits return with the ambitious new album On Different Paths, blending a myriad of cultural and musical traditions. Available January 26, 2024 via Truth Revolution Records. On Different Paths features pianist Edward Simon, trumpeters Michael Simon and Alex Norris, saxophonist Peter Brainin, bassist Boris Kozlov, and percussionist Robert Quintero. Come welcome Marlon to our show, and he'll introduce us to a new jazz. It's so rich in diverse voices, it could even be called American. That's Marlon Simon and the Nagwal Spirits on Different Paths next Wednesday on Vienna Live. As always, all upcoming shows and information about them can be found at www.simeonmore.com. Once again, thank you so very much to Micah Thomas. Thank you to Victoria and Frederick Mulligan and Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet for their support of this show. Thanks to Mary Schlesinger for the lovely Viennese library you can see behind me. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile. From New London, New Hampshire, and New York City, New York, goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Bye-bye.